governance is, then I've just tried to list a few of the results, outcomes and impacts that we've had already in the second phase, which started in September 2010, under those different headings. So firstly, looking at legal and policy reform. Well, we were successful in providing stakeholder input into the new water law in Vietnam, which is now approved in 2012. We are, in an ongoing way, encouraging stakeholder input in the new water law discussions that are going on in Lao PDR right now. In Thailand, we have quite a complex situation where there are actually 4 different and competing proposed laws related to water management at the moment. And at the end of this month, we're having a big meeting with the National Law Reform Office to examine these 4 different laws and get the civil society input and perspective on those. Following on from what we did in phase 1 on the Tonle Sap, again, can't claim complete credit for this, but ourselves, other partners, IUCN members, we've all been pushing on these kind of issues, and we were very happy to see the cancellation of all the commercial fishing lots in Tonle Sap, which was ordered by Prime Minister Hun Sen. Now, what we're doing is trying to make sure that an alternative management system is put in place that gives more rights and more benefit to the local communities. We've also had successes with the designation of new Ramsar sites, 2 in Laos, 3 already in Vietnam and 1 more on the way, and 2 under discussion in Cambodia. And looking to the future, some of the emerging things, we're discussing perhaps a new people's law on water management in Thailand. In Thailand, under the constitution, there is the possibility of a number of people, and I think it used to be 50,000, now it's 10,000, can petition to have a draft law considered. So civil society networks are working on this one. We're also discussing the possibility of a new wetlands law for Thailand. None of the Mekong countries actually have a wetlands law per se, and wetlands is something that often falls between the cracks in the legal framework. It's not covered in the water law, but it doesn't have its own law. It may be covered here and there in different laws, but it's often not very clear. Another very new emerging idea, and something that we might push for in the remaining 2 years of the project, is ratification of the UN Convention on Non-Navigational Uses of International Watercourses. And this is really because with the example of the Mekong mainstream hydropower development discussion that's happening now, we're seeing the real limitations of the existing regional or transboundary governance. The MRC is a transboundary river organization which is trying to bring the 4 countries together to achieve consensus on major development issues that have transboundary implications. But in the case of the Xayaburi Dam, they're not managed to be successful in this regard. And so we see clearly the limitations of the 1995 Mekong Agreement, and there really is no other mechanism for transboundary governance of these large rivers. So we think that perhaps ratification of the UN Convention may be an important way to go. We've already had some discussions with the Vietnamese government, and they are quite interested. So that's something that we'll probably continue to work on. In terms of institutional and process-related aspects of governance, in Laos, again, we've worked with the government to help establish the National Ramsar Committee and the subnational teams at the 2 Ramsar sites on the ground. We've developed the participatory management planning process for those Ramsar sites as well, so doing management plans with the involvement of the local communities. In Cambodia, after those fishing concessions, commercial fishing lots were cancelled, we're now trying to put in place alternative management. So we've set up a participatory monitoring process for Bung Chamer, which was a former fishing concession, to see exactly what's happening in that area. In Thailand, we're strongly promoting the application of Taiwan research, which is a participatory and action learning approach, which has been done in some areas in the water sector already, but we're now spreading it to other areas with financial support from the Thai government. Cross-cutting issues are also very important, and these include things like gender, ethnicity, and climate change. So we've been encouraging both women and ethnic minority groups to participate in the national working groups as members and as participants in the workshops held by those groups. In some of the project sites on the ground, we've done things like, for example, having women-only workshops and discussion groups. This has happened, for example, in our work in the watershed areas in northern Thailand and in the wetland areas on the ground in southern Laos. And in some cases where we've done interventions on the ground and we've looked at how it affects the different household livelihoods, we've disaggregated that information by gender, so that kind of analysis is available. In terms of climate change, we've collaborated, for example, with the MRC's Climate Change Adaptation Initiative, for example, doing a study on climate change impacts on wetlands. We've had all kinds of events and conferences ranging from the very local level to the international level. We've also got a lot of media coverage, both again in the local media and international media of what we're doing. And finally, this collaboration with regional and global partners, which is also part of the context for the longer-term sustainability of the project. I think the sustainability really comes from a number of aspects. One is that we're putting in place the enabling environment in terms of the legal and policy framework. Another is that we're building the capacity of the institutions and the individuals to continue working on those issues. And a third one is that we're collaborating with partners in the region so that they may also take on board some of these approaches and some of this work after our project ends. So again, we've had a lot of collaboration with MRC on some big issues in the region, both the Conference on Watershed Management and the Mekong to Rio Conference. We've worked very closely with the Ramsar Secretariat in doing capacity building for Ramsar management in the region. We've been quite successful in leveraging additional financial support for what I call spin-off activities from MWD, in the sense that we see really as MWD as a kind of hub or a core, that often the discussions about the governance aspects raise issues and identify things that should be done. We don't necessarily have the funding available to do all of those things within the context of MWD. We then go out and try and raise additional funds to implement those things, and that's been quite a successful approach. It's like the MWD is a kind of magnet that's attracting interest of others to it. And just one most recent example that's ongoing right now, we're working together closely with TNC and WWF, developing the Great Rivers Partnership for the Mekong, which will take forward a lot of this work for the next 5 to 10 years into the future. And finally, just to mention, because that's what we're leading into now, we've collaborated with IMI and the Challenge Programme on this Mekong hydropower movement. And Ganesh has already introduced it a little bit to say that hydropower is a growing issue in the Mekong region. So we've therefore, there is a movie being developed by an independent film producer, which we are going to use basically as a catalyst to stimulate discussion around the region on these hydropower issues. The film is intended to present different perspectives on hydropower and the good and the bad aspects of it. It raises a lot of questions. It doesn't necessarily provide all the answers because it's not supposed to. What we're going to show you now is just a short section of clips from the film. It's about, I think, 7 minutes in total that we've called Voices from the Mekong. It's just 4 or 5 different perspectives. Bear in mind that this is still a rough version. The final product will be more polished. The narration will be provided professional. This is not a professional narrator at the moment, and the sound quality and other things will be improved. Excuse me. So with that, I'd just like to thank you for your attention on my presentation, and then we'll move straight into the film. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Just not the full film.
It's not a film. Action shot.
Hydropower contributes something like 33% to the natural capital of the wealth of Laos. And if Laos want to leave the least developed country status by 2020, this is our only choice.
Sampang Barachong started out life as a fisher, and then because she felt she had no other choice, she became an activist.
เรามี4 คดีคดีล่าสุดนี้ยังไม่หมดอายุความคือคดีซ่องสุมโจรที่ฉันเป็นหัวหน้าโจร
But at the end of the day, everyone wants electricity. We want to see in the dark and light our monuments. We want jobs, and we want to buy things. There's nothing wrong with that. But the question remains, to turn on the lights in the big city through hydropower, what's the real cost? Especially when you factor in the impacts to those living in the country close to a dam.
ผมไม่ได้พยายามจะบอกว่าให้เราเลิกใช้ไฟฟ้าและเลิกพัฒนาเศรษฐกิจแต่สิ่งที่ผมกำลังจะบอกก็คือว่าไฟฟ้าที่ใช้อยู่การสร้างโรงไฟฟ้าที่มีอยู่มันไม่มีประสิทธิภาพในขณะนี้เขื่อน
นะที่ประชาชนจำนวนมากเดือดร้อนเช่นปาล์มมูลนะฮะปาล์มมูลผลิตไฟฟ้าทั้งปีนะฮะประมาณ160 ล้านหน่วยเรามีห้างสรรพสินค้า3 ห้างในกรุงเทพคือพารากอนมาบุญครองแล้วก็เซ็นทรัลเวิลด์ใช้ไฟฟ้ารวมกันถึงประมาณ270 กว่าล้านหน่วยซึ่งเขื่อนปากมูลเขื่อนเดียวไม่สามารถจะป้อนไฟฟ้าให้กับ3 ห้างนี้ได้ห้างสรรพสินค้าเหล่านี้สามารถทำให้มันมีประสิทธิภาพได้มากกว่านี้โดยที่คุณจะไม่เสียอะไรเลย
is a boatman. He takes tourists to see the dolphins. He knows about these dams, and he knows that they may or may not be built. Bunma has a pragmatic attitude about what these dams mean for himself and the dolphins.
Nhưng khi lột ra rồi ông nhà và nó nhưng mà nó còn ba cái băng ngọn mùi cũng thông lại là phát quạt thật sao thế nhưng mà để cho cái băng mùi cái anh cả thành cái băng cái kiểu không kiểu chỉ nó ta bị là dùng giang này
First of all, I'd like to thank my colleague Robert for that presentation. Thank you very much, Robert. Because we are doing good with time, if anybody has a burning question to Robert on MWD, I will entertain 2 questions. So I see one hand, Jeff, and can we have the gentleman from behind speak first? The mic, please.
I can use my microphone.
Okay.
I just want to ask, as I understand, this Mekong River either originates or passes through China. Is that right? But it doesn't feature anywhere in the dialogue. How do you see an impact on the success of dialogue or the outcomes in absence of China?
We'll take it. Jeff, your question.
That was my question as well.
Okay, so does this question be answered by Robert, Ganesh, Jake? Who wants to answer this?
You're there, you
It's a
can
queue.
answer.
It's a queue. Okay, I think it's really a great question. Number one, you have to understand that even the Mekong River Commission is only the 4 door countries. China, as you said rightly, is where the river starts. China has built 6 dams already on the Mekong. China has nothing. It's not again China bashing. Please understand. You asked a question. I'm trying to give you facts on the table. So therefore, your question, and Jeff, is really valid. But what we felt is that the Mekong Water Dialogues, we wanted to actually start changing the context and the scene and the governance in the region. That itself was, we thought, as the first building block to, in the process. And you're absolutely right, phase 2 and what Robert said, the spin-off projects is where we're now trying to bring China in. To answer in a different way, you have to also understand that when we talk about hydrodiplomacy, a lot of times it's the sovereign issues of countries which are important first, and some countries like bilateral negotiations. They don't like trilateral or multilateral negotiations, and therefore we have to see how do we work in this kind of a context. To summarize, what we're therefore trying to do in phase 2 is, having built this energy and momentum in the lower Mekong countries, it's not only China, the river also comes from Burma, Myanmar. So we have to also get them into the dialogues and the process. And that's what we are doing, what we now call as, in IUCN, as track 3 diplomacy. that is building people-to-people, institution-to-institution diplomacy, which can then, at the end of the day, advocate and lobby with the individual governments. You have to understand that IUCN itself cannot go to the government and say, hey, listen, what's happening. But what we can do is take the facts, work with institutions on both sides of the border, and then do policy advocacy. I think that's what we are doing, and therefore we have already made inroads now into Myanmar, and we have now started linkages with Chinese institutes, and we are working. I'm sorry I went a little long, but it's a complex question, and if I answer in one way, I'm going to be shot by somebody. So any last question? Because Jeff said it. Okay. What I'm going to do is, Robert, if I can ask you, get 5 chance, 2 more quickly. Jake. Friends, we have a very high distinguished panel now with us. Not commenting actually on what they saw in these clips, because that was just kind of a flavor, or to just the Indian masala, as I would say from India, is to give you some thoughts, but please do not make this a discussion on dams. And what we are really looking at is the issues that Robert highlighted, the issues that we saw in the clip are to do, therefore, of, as I said, the sovereignty of countries. If the Lao minister says, if they have to get out of being the least